Unlike Delacourt, the only being, man or vampire, Rhys had ever called friend, had moved to Boston with his new bride, the delectable Daisy O'Donnell. It was an odd match, Rhys mused, the vampire and the blood thief. Former blood thief, he amended, since she had given up that line of work when Delacourt turned her. Ah, Daisy, Rhys thought, a tasty morsel indeed. But she was a female, and as a sex they were more treacherous than the male and not to be trusted, a truth he had learned first-hand centuries ago. He rarely let himself think of the fair Josette, but tonight, feeling maudlin and a little lonely, he unlocked the gates of the past and stepped inside. He had met Josette Rousseau in the summer of 1575 in Warwickshire. He remembered the year well because Robert Dudley had thrown a lavish party for Queen Elizabeth I at his castle in Kenilworth. The gathering had lasted 3 weeks. Of course, Rhys hadn't been invited. Commoners, whether vampire or mortal, didn't mingle with royalty, but everyone, highborn or low, talked about the gala event for weeks afterward. Josette had been a young widow and a woman of means, with an estate in the country and a small townhouse in London. Rhys had been a young vampire back then, bold and impetuous. One look at Josette's clear porcelain skin and sparkling blue eyes and he had been hopelessly smitten. He could have mesmerized her and made her want him, but it hadn't been necessary. The attraction between them had been instantaneous and impossible to ignore. He'd met her on a Saturday night and taken her to his bed the following Friday. Because he'd been young and proud, he had refused to move into her lavish estate. Instead, he'd insisted they meet at his flat, humble as it was. Fearing that he might hurt her, or worse, turn her in a moment of weakness, he'd been careful to feed each night before she came to him. He'd never known a woman like her. As elegant and proud as a queen when they were with the ton, as wanton as any common courtesan when they were alone. Several months passed, and Rhys had been happier than he had ever been, either as a mortal man or a vampire, so in love that he no longer cared that she was wealthy, or that he was far beneath her socially, so in love that he had decided to put their differences aside and ask her to marry him. It was a bold move for a man whose mother had been a prostitute, a man who'd once stolen from the rich to keep body and soul together. He'd had marriage on his mind the night he went, unexpected and unannounced, to her estate. It was a night he would never forget. Expecting to find his lady love in her bedroom dressing for dinner, he had floated up to her second-floor window, thinking how surprised she would be to see him at such an early hour. The surprise had been his. He'd found Josette in bed with a young duke, and in that instant, reality had come rushing in, and with it the certainty that she had never loved him. She'd merely been using him for her own amusement, the lady and the commoner. Fueled by rage and a sense of betrayal beyond words, he had killed the young man. Deaf to Josette's cries for forgiveness, unmoved by her incoherent pleas for mercy, Rhys had let her see him for the monster that he was. Her terror had driven him over the edge. Taking her in his embrace, he had buried his fangs in her throat and taken what he had denied himself for so long. Took it all, until she lay limp and unmoving in his arms. Horrified by what he'd done, he fled the house. In the 435 years since that night, he had never let himself care for another woman. He'd seduced them. He'd made love to them. He drank from them, but he had guarded his heart like a fortress. 435 years, he mused, sipping his wine. It was a long time to be alone and unloved. He thought again of Delacourt and his Daisy. Despite the fact that Delacourt was a vampire and Daisy had been a blood thief when they met, the two of them had fallen in love. Rhys grinned inwardly. Knowing Daisy, it was hard to believe that she had once crept up on sleeping vampires, stolen a pint of their blood, and sold it on the internet. But then, looks could be deceiving. Rhys ran a hand through his hair. If Delacourt and Daisy could overcome obstacles like that, maybe it was time for him to try again. Rhys snorted softly. What the hell was he thinking?